Hi everyone, it's Guillaume from Startup Basecamp. Welcome to the Tech for Climate podcast. During the show, you will have the opportunity to meet the best climate tech founders, investors, and experts from both Silicon Valley and around the globe. They will share with you their stories and personal journeys into this growing and exciting industry, giving you some insight into the ecosystems that help you to take part in the fight against climate change and benefit from the opportunities it can represent. The podcast is divided in two small interviews. During the first part, you will get to know our speakers, their perspectives on the climate crisis and how climate tech is changing the game. The second part of the discussion will be for members of our community who will learn the speakers' secret sauce on how to and share with you their unique expertise on topics such as fundraising, management, strategy, and so on, to help you to become a better leader in your field. So before we start, I would like to quickly share what we are doing at Startup Basecamp to support climate tech founders in accessing resources and gaining visibility with investors they seek. Our initiatives include a membership-based community platform offering access to a dedicated Slack group with a growing number of founders, experts, and investors from around the world, and a series of exclusive content such as interviews, weekly job listings, events, and our quarterly online pitch of night opportunity. But more than a place where you can learn, exchange, and grow, we are building a matchmaking service to facilitate connections between our members and top investors and experts in the field. And soon, alongside with other top investors, we will be launching a small fund to co-invest in the growth and acceleration of our members. Finally, all of this is possible because of your support and donations. We are a small self-funded team, and we want you to be part of this collective movement against climate change. So please share one episode with a friend and subscribe to the channels. As an added bonus, we will plant a tree for each of our subscribers each time we reach 1,000 new fans or donors. Do not hesitate to connect with me via social media or email guillaume@startupbasecamp. Thanks a lot for listening. I hope to get in touch with you soon. And now, let's go for the show. Hi everyone, happy 2022. In our first episode of the year, we're beginning the Founder Series by sitting down with Brittany Salas, co-founder and CEO at Sādu app. Sādu is a play-to-earn marketplace for nature-based carbon credit. The app leverages smartwatches and fitness trackers to connect a sense of personal well-being with the climate crisis, giving companies the ability to reward health and fitness commitments with trees planted in global reforestation projects. In the near future, users will have access to participate in the carbon market through the ease of NFTs. I was excited to have Brittany on the show, an incredible woman passionate about surfing and yoga, who spent part of her career in the EU supporting CleanTech startups with plug-and-play venture. After this, she moved back to California and launched Sādu with the vision to bring a bottom-up approach to engage people in the climate crisis. In this episode, we will learn more about her experience of the nature-based carbon removal solutions landscape. Together, we will cover the initial challenges of building their product and nailing down the gamification mechanism to engage the user to earn trees. We'll also go deeper into the potential of NFTs for users looking to enter the carbon market, the controversy around blockchain's energy needs, how it can be mitigated, and the opportunities it offers in the climate crisis. Finally, Brittany will share the next steps necessary in achieving their vision and how you can get involved. During the second part of the talk, Brittany will give a secret sauce for early stage founders looking to bootstrap by relating to her own long and bumpy journey with Sādu app's early days. Finally, she will share some of the books she learned from and her own work-life balance tips for busy founders. Brittany, welcome to the show. Hi Brittany, welcome to the Tech for Climate podcast. We are super happy to have you here with us today for the first episode of the year after this long holiday season break. I hope you had a great break too.
Yes, awesome. Thank you so much for the invite. I'm really excited to be here and share more as we kick off the new year.
Fantastic. So before we start, as usual, we like to get a 30-second intro about Sadu.
Awesome. So Sadu is a play to earn marketplace for nature-based carbon credits. So what that means is that anyone can actually earn trees with their fitness activities and participate in the carbon market through the use of NFTs. So we'll get to that in a bit, but that's a quick introduction there.
Fantastic. So let's start from the top, as you know, and all of our followers like to hear. It's like when we put the speakers back into the interview as a really the human. So would like to learn more about like your personal story and background. I mean, what are you passionate about? What do you love to do besides work? I'm sure there's plenty of stuff that you like to do except building what you are building today. I mean, what makes you feel inspired or like your best self? Who is Brittany?
Yeah, awesome. I mean, I do have to admit that in terms of many other things outside of work, there is not much, I have to be honest. And it just comes from this foundation of the fact that I'm lucky enough to be working on something that I really do care about and I identify with on a personal level. So outside of just spending time, on a PC, it's about taking care of myself in yoga, going to CrossFit every once in a while, trying to surf when I can. I think those are my three, most favorite activities. And definitely anything that does focus on this sense of like personal wellness and reflection, to just understand how humans relate to each other and to the natural world. So those there's some of if you can tell there's a hint of philosophy in there as well, that I just enjoy following and discussing with friends and family. So
That's
that's a
amazing.
bit
So
about, yeah.
no, go for it. Go for it.
I would say that's more the personal side, as opposed to just focusing on Sadu.
Fantastic, and I know as entrepreneurs, especially in the early stage, I mean, a company is really like taking 100%, 110% of your time, but you always you always have passion on the side as well, and that's what we like to hear too. So tell us a bit more about your different, I would say, work and life experience that led to the launch of Sadu. I mean, what did you learn during that professional journey so far? That in a way, when you now look back, you can connect all the dots and say, yeah, that's really like skills and situation I found myself into that in a way can really be useful for this new adventure that I'm doing now with Sadu.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when I think about my experience, it almost seems like everything is leading up to this moment, in a perfect time. But even from high school, I was pretty interested with this, like the concept of economic development and how the, global economy functions and why, there's seeming imbalances and inequality and kind of the different ways and systems that can be addressed to work out those inequalities on an economic and social level. So I studied international political economy and got a double major in philosophy, for my undergrad, and that led me to really focus on advocating for worker cooperatives, or basically different nonprofit initiatives in which individuals were actually taught to launch their own businesses and then own a piece of equity within that business. You have this worker-owned model. Um, from that, I also started to develop, I would say, greater awareness of, the role that climate and climate tech plays in global equality and inequality and social economics and all of that. And then went to grad school and studied global energy policy and sustainability policy. Um, that is kind of what pushed me into this idea of clean tech, and working with different startups. So previously to founding this company, I was actually working with Plug and Play, running one of their sustainability programs within Europe, working with different energy corporations and VCs, basically helping them scout for startups and then do business with one another. And through that process and working with different corporations on the innovation, let's say strategies that they were taking, a large part of me realized that no matter how ambitious some of these projects were, or how much some of these champions and people within these corporations or investors wanted to see the change and wanted to see the scale, in a way that had both the positive economic benefit and a bottom line return for their business while creating a positive environmental return. It still came down to, so many different people within one large scale organization rallying and supporting this specific, let's say, corporate policy. And we can see this, in government policy as well. At the end of the day, there are many, many individual decision makers that play a role in some of the large scale change that really needs to occur quickly to address the climate crisis. And through seeing all of that, I became very motivated, I would say, to take a step back and then work on these bottom-up solutions in which that personal motivation is actually communicated to individuals. So that is why now I'm working on Sādu, which is focused much more on the interaction between the individual and the climate crisis. But yeah, I'll stop there.
So do you think that you have any driver to jump into the impact and climate tech industry solely? Because you mentioned your experience with plug and play since 2015, if I don't mistake. Do you recall any aha moments that you would define as such that really was the driver to jump into this road, or is really this succession of little experiences or big experience?
Yeah. So I think it was 2017, but it was definitely the sum of small parts that led to this point in my life. I don't think there was any, the idea of even founding a company didn't cross my mind until probably 2019, right? And so for the longest time, I was very much on the side of policy advocacy and looking at, larger scale change as a way to move the needle on climate change. And just understanding that working towards a triple bottom line solution always just interested me. So, social, economic, and environmental, understanding, why things work the way they do and how we can tweak systems to create all of those benefits. But it's much more been a process about learning through experience, understanding where skills I have can actually play a role in creating a new system that can affect some change, and kind of tweaking that understanding and then my work in order to be able to fit a bit more of the solution that I wanted to work on. And that's what led me to decide to start working on a company, right? It's a bit of just a little bit along the way and learning a lot that's been required for that.
Okay. So before we start going into details about Sadu, we'd like to zoom out and kind of understand the ecosystem that you're evolving into. And here, nature-based carbon removal solution landscape, it's always a very interesting topic. I'd like to hear a bit more about your opinion on what is the situation today compared to, we hear a lot more about direct air capture, tech-enabled solution that, will save all of us by removing all the carbon of the atmosphere. And I think they're very necessary. There's some very exciting things happening there. But tell us a bit more about the nature-based, carbon removal solution landscape today. You guys are working with players directly. Maybe if you can tell us a bit more about them, about the solution existing, why is something to also, consider and go for, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think there's a lot of debate within climate circles around what is the best solution to tackle the climate crisis with. And inevitably, the answer always comes down to everything. We need everything possible to be able to do this. And yes, direct carbon air capture plays a role. We're already moving closer to, let's say, or over budgeting the amount of carbon that should be allocated in order to stay below that 1.7 degree limit set out by the IPCC. And so, yes, that will be necessary. But at the same time, if your nature-based solutions will always have a role to play in tackling climate change. One, because there's not enough trees and we will always need more trees, from a bottom line perspective. Two, there's also the ecosystem benefits that are extremely important as well. So it's not just about taking and measuring this unit of carbon and applying it to more of an economic perspective, but also wildlife and habitat restoration and focusing on the benefits of biodiversity that also come with nature-based solutions. And so while it may be a bit more complex to actually, let's say, keep a tree alive or plant trees in ways that provide those ecosystem benefits, even potentially measure the carbon that is being sequestered by a tree over its lifetime, is fairly complex. But again, all of those benefits are compounded by the social and, let's say, ecosystem benefits of investing into nature-based solutions. So on top of, trees being a bit also easier to comprehend, especially for those who are outside of a climate movement, there is a tangible feeling to a tree in the fresh air that you can breathe, in the fact that you can touch it. Let's say, I think there's this new term coming out for this, but just that feeling of, interconnection when walking through on a hike, and understanding the human role in the ecosystem. All of these sub-benefits are the reasons that, I chose personally to focus on nature-based solutions, and why I think that regardless of where the climate debate is going, that, trees are always going to be beneficial for the planet, bottom line.
No, for sure. And who are the players that you guys are working with, or that you've identified into the I would say more like providers are giving access to do solution at small or large scale. How do you, if you can give us a small overview on that landscape based on your knowledge, research, and what you have seen so far?
Yep. So right now we're working with 5 different projects. Each of them have their own unique approach to nature-based solutions. These projects are relatively small scale, so they're not on official carbon markets, and a lot of that conversation is based around the fact that the investment into having a international body certify their trees as nature-based carbon credits is just, the cost-benefit analysis doesn't work out for them. It'd be so much more productive to use that funding to plant trees. And so the projects that we're working with, Planted, We Forest Trees for the Future, Sea Trees, which actually focuses on kelp restoration, and Green Stand, each one of them has approaches that vary from, let's say, forest gardens. So this is Trees for the Future, working with individual farmers to actually plant trees around their crops and fight desertifications while increasing crop yields. And we have We Forest, they focused a lot on ecosystem, biodiversity, and habitat restoration. Green Stand is building out a technical infrastructure in which the small-scale farmers can actually verify the trees have been planted and share that data with any individual looking to actually compensate on a per-tree basis that work that has been done. And Sea Trees, they're based out here in California. And I think now that blue carbon, or a discussion around how much carbon can be sequestered by the ocean and the huge role that it plays, looking at kelp forests, the way that they tackle, let's say, the kelp forest and restoration is to be able to remove the Bay Foundation, essentially swims off the coast of California, mediates a population of sea urchins. Sea urchins eat kelp. With less urchins, more kelp forests. The more kelp forests, the more they can sequester carbon from the ocean. And then as the kelp dies, the sediments sink to the bottom of the ocean floor and maintain the sequestered carbon. And so that's just an example of some of the work that they do. I'm sure they can all do a very good job of explaining in detail their individual missions as an organization as well.
Fantastic. So on the other side, you have this. Would love to hear a little bit more about the. I was mentioning that before the interview, like what I call this employee engagement regarding climate change, and I believe that Sadu is really trying to help companies to engage in a faster and better manner the employees regarding climate change. But is that really something that, based on your research again, do you see like that there is a real willingness and engagement around that topic in terms of the employee as of today? Do you have any data about that, or is it more like something that what is the real situation today? How do you see it when you speak with companies? Do you have any data that you could share, and maybe how is like the HR side of it, like the company is like reacting to that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think what that essentially gets down to is the level of greenwashing that employee engagement or corporate sustainability initiatives actually support versus tangible change within an organization. So, as I mentioned earlier, understanding when I say tangible change, I mean like direct change to the way work is done, the supply chain, or different processes that understand, measuring emissions on a very minute detail, as opposed to investing into, let's say, marketing campaigns that would support external investments into clean technology or sustainability solutions. Um, Essentially both are necessary. The operational changes needed within a company to reduce emissions and also to communicate those changes. And as I mentioned earlier, communication and support for those changes is super important because it's not one individual that's championing a sustainability initiative within an organization. It's everyone who has to work on that change as well. And so this is where this concept of employee engagement first developed within Sādu. It was like, hey, how do we create an internal movement within a company in which we can gather the support necessary to make those deeper changes? And so that's where the communication aspect plays a big role. I think measuring the success of that communication, no, we don't have data on it yet, just to be completely transparent. But it's also another reason why we're focusing much more on building a product for a specific user as an individual and understanding, this gamification incentive of what really motivates the user to want to earn trees on a daily basis and feel rewarded and get competitive. And start there, right? Build out the relationship with the individual user, and from there, see how that scales to a larger company, or anyone who just even wants to like create a movement amongst their friends to do something on a regular basis. It doesn't have to be just companies.
Fantastic. So this is probably a good segue to go to my next question. Really like go and do a deep dive into Sadu. So can you just like you mentioned already a part of the story, but I'd like to hear a little bit like and it would be interesting for the whole audience as well to learn about like the initial story with your co-founder. How did you guys meet? What was your initial motivation to start off? And then if you can cover a bit more like the deeper knowledge, the problem that you guys have identified and you are trying to solve, and for who at first. I mean, we mentioned companies, we mentioned employees, you mentioned also your people who regular like end users like me who wants to do better maybe with his friends. So if you can tell us a bit more about like what is your first demographic that you are going at first, or where you see that there is the most response right now.
Yeah, definitely. So my co-founder, Elise Cannon, she has a background in data science and product management. She's been with Shell and worked for FinTech for a while in Berlin. She's originally from Australia. We both met while I was living in Berlin through Factory. They have a female founders program, so shout out to that program. Both were working on sustainability initiatives at the same time and like eyeing each other like, all right, who is this girl? Like, who's this competition? What are we gonna how's this going to work? And I think a lot of it, we not only got along as friends, but also we're super mission aligned in how we wanted to spend our time, and where we wanted to make sure that our effort and our skills were best allocated. And that was definitely like focusing on climate change and building a solution and building a system to address one of the biggest problems that is facing humanity right now. And it's been a super fun journey. Sadu itself was incorporated in October of 2020. And then we launched our app in beta, or the first like public version of the app, in July of 2021. So it's been really nice to see just the initial traction. I think we've had around 212 crew challenges. So those are similar to what we were talking about earlier with this engagement aspect. And so what we're really focused on right now, where we've seen the most adoption, is with individuals, whether they be in a company or on their own, who want a clear and easy way to play a role in the solution to climate change and we're connecting this sense of personal wellness with the health of the planet, and starting off by using fitness as a way to recreate that connection. and build that incentive to take more larger, let's say, commitments to sustainability in every other area of life. And so it's really a solution for anyone who wants to do something on a regular basis and get an understanding for how they can contribute to nature-based solutions to climate change, plant trees. At the same time, also expand into this concept of not just fitness and personal well-being, but also financial well-being. So what does it mean to invest in nature-based solutions to climate change? How do we then define that investment, and how can an individual see a reward not just in their sense of personal well-being, but understand that how they spend their money can have a positive environmental impact? And so I can share more about that in a bit, but that's essentially the mission of what we're aiming to do.
So I think it's a good time for us to really get a little walkthrough from you in terms of the user experience. Like I'm downloading your app on the App Store on or Google Play. Like, how does it work? Like, how did you guys build this app? What is the engagement that you put behind that? And tell us a bit more about the user experience of using Sadu.
Yeah, so it's super easy right now. Essentially, you can download the app, and if you're working with Fitbit, Apple Health, or Strava, just sync a fitness tracker, or enter an activity right after it's done into the app directly. And then we'll calculate the amount of trees earned as a result of the calories burned during that activity. And so it's a way for us to kind of measure and anchor the relationship between taking care of yourself and the planet at the same time. And essentially, we do have these crew challenges. So basically, it's a 30-day challenge for anywhere from 10 to 50 members to earn as many trees as possible over those 30 days. It's anywhere from free for 10 members up to $96 for 50 members. And that's actually what covers the cost of the trees. So the way it works is that if we have a super active crew and they're running marathons like every week, then yes, there is a chance that Sādu makes no profit and we have to allocate all of that funding to the different projects. But essentially, we've worked out a model in which case the average individual who works out, we allocate the funding according to those activities, and then the rest Sādu uses as its revenue model in order to keep the company running.
Okay.
And so, yeah.
So we'll cover the more like the financial part of it a little bit later on the interview. But then I've been running, I've been sweating, I spent my 30 days challenge, and I have a bunch of trees. Where do I find them? What's happening with those trees? How does it work as a user? Like, do I visit them time to time where are those trees? In the rainforest? Are they in California? Because a lot of them burn down and we need to replant them. I mean, tell us a bit more about after this whole hard effort that I did for planting those trees. What's next in terms of user experience?
Yeah, I mean, that's great. That's great that you asked that, because that's exactly how we got to the solution that we're most excited about implementing. So one important aspect of that question is the verification. How do we know that these trees are actually being planted and where they are? And then another aspect is like, okay, I've earned my trees, and now what? What's the reward? How can I show all of the work that has been done for this? So in terms of verification, we're working with partners that can provide satellite imagery of the specific projects that we're working with. And we're also super excited to build in an integration in which each tree can be tokenized, and the data on when, where, and who planted that tree is actually provided to our app users. And so with that verification data, we essentially want to wrap it into an NFT. That can then be placed on an external marketplace to show either the personal collection of trees earned, or to essentially, and this is the hope, that one day that token will contain enough data to actually exchange on some sort of carbon market. And this way we can engage anyone who essentially wants to earn carbon credits and then resell them in the future. And this depends, of course, on trees staying alive. And this is the most exciting part, is that we're essentially building these credits in a way that incentivizes trees not to just get planted, but the longer that tree is alive, the more carbon it sequesters, the more valuable that token becomes on the carbon market. And so users can then essentially earn a digital asset that appreciates over time. And that's the vision for what we're working on. And I mean, the gamification element, as I mentioned earlier, and you said like, okay, earn trees, now what? Like, this is the important part. Like, we put in the work, we log our activities. Yes, we earn trees in the app through these challenges, but they function more or less as contributions. It's hard to understand, the transparency behind that. But essentially, over time, you earn these tokens, and that actually contains much more information on the verification and also can act as an investment for the app user as well.
So in case of the tree dies, for instance, like, is it replaced? Is it like the token like just is right out of the blockchain? So how does it work? And maybe another question is like, you heard about crypto mining and basically using the same blockchain technology behind it. Very, very consuming in terms of energy, very, brown energy often. So how do you see like this parallel between planting trees but being hosted in a dirty, at least like an environment that is very asking a lot of energy to be maintained? How do you see that?
Yeah. So in terms of the trees dying, I mean, this is the part that's super fun for us and like essentially like why we're raising funding to be able to tackle how we create these portfolios of tokens in a way that accounts for that loss and how that, reserve is measured in terms of the carbon that is sequestered when some trees die, and then mapping that out into a portfolio of tokens. Like, this is also a shout out to anyone who's listening. If that gets anyone super excited, please come talk to us because this is definitely the most fun part about what we're working on. But in regards to the energy consumption of mining itself, like, yes, energy, like, one, there are more efficient ways to actually mine cryptocurrency. And as technology develops, we have more and more efficient solutions that are being developed to reduce the energy consumption. Of course, there's most clearly right now is the difference between proof of work and proof of stake being much lower. And then in addition to that, there are different projects that are working on the renewable energy credits themselves and using that to actually verify where the energy for these different operations is coming from and how much of these renewable energy credits make up the mining operations of these specific projects. So that's one avenue and steps that are being taken to ensure that there is more environmental sustainability being taken into account within this, let's say, operation. And then on top of that, like, I always come back to the energy debate. I think, yes, like, too much energy consumption and being wasteful, that is not good, but at the same time, it's not the use of energy, it's where the energy comes from. And so using the demand for this technology to incentivize renewable energy infrastructure, whether that be at the source or whether that be through investment in transmission and distribution, or the development of different renewable energy microgrids, even investments into things like nuclear, which can provide a consistent baseload power, the type that's needed to keep a data center up and running and keep these mining operations working. To me, there's a ton that can be incentivized through this growing sector and solutions that, are being worked on. So I'm more optimistic about the energy consumption within this operation as opposed to calling it bad because we're using a lot of energy.
So let's go back to the product in itself. So how long did it take you and your team to put together the first prototype, and what were the initial challenges? How did you overcome them, and in a way, what keeps you up at night right now?
Yeah. So from, let's say, it took about 6 months to get our product to market, including the initial beta launch. So it was super fun. And what we wanted to do essentially was make sure that we were interacting with users and gaining feedback to understand, why they were even attracted to this idea of earning trees with their activities. And I think for us right now, I mean, the fun part is really in this coming up with the correct technical solution to ensure that we're not just creating a replication of an existing carbon market and then putting it on blockchain and selling it through the app. Like what we're most fascinated about is creating a digital asset with a positive environmental impact. And so the ways that we then engineer and build that asset is there are a lot of technical details that go into it. And yes, we do dream about it. We also have nightmares about climate change. But, I think that's it's pretty standard, right?
No, definitely. I mean, it was just like to understand a bit better what like if you guys are facing like any specific challenges today. You had some in the past, I'm sure, as any startups and founders, always sharing experience about like how you overcome them or what is really like making your night shorter right now and what is exciting you about. But yeah, let's move on a little bit about gamification in itself. I know it's a big part of it. You explained already the way how it works. I'd like to understand a bit like about like what are the in a way the tactics or process or what you have been developing about like gamification to make in a way the engagement higher into your app. What did if any like existing app inspired you that you said, okay, this is a very interesting way of doing it that I should replicate into my product or not?
Okay, cool. Yeah, so if we're looking at kind of the role that, say, carbon markets and crypto has been evolving over time, I think in 2016 there were a number of tokens that came out that actually aimed to move the carbon market onto a blockchain, and also implement some of the same financial mechanisms that you see in terms of like settlement and trading and basically clearing or the burning of these credits and ensuring that there's no double counting. And through that process, a lot of time has kind of evolved into extrapolating the idea of matching carbon credits with a specific token, and that token not only playing a role in DeFi, but also playing a role in, let's say, the gamification element or agriculture or energy as well has always played a role there. And so looking at the way NFTs are now really connected to this sense of creativity and applying that to the metaverse or let's say AR, VR solutions and combining that with everything that has been learned from everyone working on tokenizing carbon credits. Like I think there's a total of maybe 54 different projects that are, experimenting within this ecosystem. A lot of them have come up within the past year. But that's essentially been the inspiration, and I guess you could call some of them our competitors, although I do think you have everyone working from, creating digital twins of forestry projects and turning that data into a token and selling it. You have some who are not just focused on the data itself, but maybe the relationship, like expressing how an individual interacts with its ecosystem through these like AR, VR applications. We have more of the artistic side of things where you see NGOs and nonprofits doing fundraisers and working with artists and selling their creative interpretation of the climate crisis and tacking that on to funding these nature-based solutions or different projects that benefit the environment. And so, yeah, I mean, that's kind of pushed us into a direction to really focus on more of the gamification element, which I think is untapped at the moment. So the idea of engaging someone on a daily basis, working towards a specific goal, earning a digital asset, and then being able to use that asset outside of the game that is our mobile app is a fun way to, I think, understand the incentive structures between individuals and the environment and their relationship with earning points, essentially.
So let's go a little bit deeper into the economics of Sadu. Can you tell us a bit more about the business model in terms of user acquisition? If you have any data you can share already, like what are the margin? I mean, how are you paying the trees? Who is paying the trees? Tell us a bit more about like if investors want to invest in the company, why do they think that more than saving the planet or at least contributing to the climate crisis and putting some very interesting model with NFTs. why should they invest in your awesome team?
Yeah, awesome. So from a climate perspective, we have about 133 billion per year that's being allocated to nature-based solutions. And a lot of what the issue with that is, it's great that the funding is there and there should be even more funding, but there is a lack of infrastructure in the way that funding is distributed to different tree planting projects. So even the idea of creating a system in which it's easier to distribute funding from voluntary carbon markets to any project that wants to come on board, not necessarily one that has to get a certification through a big, let's say, nonprofit or international organization. That is one problem in terms of how we address the climate crisis through the app. And if we boil that down to an individual, as I mentioned earlier, we have about 200 of these crew challenges. So basically, that is what provides our initial revenue. It also is what creates a consistent source of funding that we can allocate to the projects. And then on top of that, once we launch the NFTs, that will essentially be another way for us to then, let's say, charge a commission on the NFTs that are sold when they're eventually sold on a secondary market. But first and foremost, we have these crew challenges, and we'll also be implementing a subscription model as well, so that anyone can earn a specific amount of trees per month, like easy, and then additionally work towards owning these NFTs if that is something that they'd like to do.
So basically the user like pay upfront in your subscription model, and then if he's not working out, you guys keep the money. You don't invest the trees, but if he's working out, then it converts into a tree. Correct?
For the crew challenges, yes, correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
For the subscription, it would be a guaranteed number of trees that would be allocated to the projects, regardless of the earning aspect.
So tell us a bit more about the competition today. And you mentioned that in a way there's no direct competition, but I'm sure there's like people who are like in a way taking a piece of your potential market. Do you have any like view on that in in the EU, in the US, North America in general, or maybe somewhere else in the world? Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, for our overall global market, we were focusing on the growth of the carbon market and combining that with the sale of NFTs. So we should, in 2022 itself, so this year alone, we have about 1.5 billion that could be allocated just to this aspect of tokenizing carbon credits. And that was calculated by basically applying the growth rate of the carbon market to the growth rate of NFTs, and assuming there was no additional purchase of digital assets within this aspect. And in terms of like direct competitors, we see there are definitely other games out there that are working with this idea of rewarding app users with trees. However, I would say we are competing much more with other apps or subscription services to either trees or offsetting carbon credits, in which a user can then come and say, hey, I just want to pay and be done with it. And so our USP there is to then say, hey, it's another level of engagement of actually earning these trees by investing in your personal well-being and creating this sense of environmental sustainability that can be scaled into other parts of life, not just a offset and forget mentality.
Okay, so in terms of scaling, I mean, you mentioned a few hundreds, couple of hundreds group of users right now. What is the path for you guys to grow? What is your roadmap in terms of really go more aggressively into the market? How do you see your ways? What are the steps that you need to achieve today to really go at scale?
Yeah. So we have a few thousand users on board, which is great. Over 30% of them, which have stayed since the very beginning of our first alpha release. And we definitely see that growth rate going up as we have different requests from our app users to implement features around the verification and the gamification that I had mentioned earlier. In terms of where we want to go, first and foremost, getting the team together to actually launch these NFTs in the app. That is our priority and what we'll focus on over the next 6 months. And then there's just, a lot of, I'd say, technical aspects that we would need to work out in order to address questions that you had mentioned earlier. So what if the trees die? How do we represent and update, the smart contract that we're actually placing on chain, and ensure that that token still holds value. So working out those types of details is definitely what will consume us for the next year. But we really just want to build our team and get these NFTs out there.
What are the avenue in terms of growth? Do you see like more like partnership? Do you see really like acquiring like user one by one, or going with like directly company that is that can spread your app to a pool of employees? Like, what is your ways that you think would be the in a way the fastest and the best way to scale the company?
Cool. That's a great question. So in the short term, these crew challenges just in which users are earning trees based off of their fitness activities is our means to growth. So partnering with different companies or let's say fitness like festivals, challenges, fitness instructors themselves who have classes or studios that they want to bring more users and kind of create their first, reaction to playing a role in sustainability. So these types of partnerships will eventually are helping us bring on more users as opposed to just speaking with them one-on-one. And then also tapping into this whole eco-conscious side of a Web3 community as well, that being an avenue for us to create more interest in the app.
Okay. Couple of more questions to close this first part of the interview. In terms of impact, can you tell us a bit more about like the notion of impact for Sadu at scale? Like, how far do you think you guys can go in terms of like climate impact and maybe social impact? What's your vision behind that?
Yeah, so I mean, I wish I could say we could plant a specific number of trees per year, but that really does depend a lot on how active everyone is at the moment. No, but in all seriousness, what gets me excited the most is taking steps towards creating a new carbon market, and really understanding how to create an economy that is tied to a price of carbon or tied to a specific digital asset that actually has an environmental component to it. I think a lot of what I get back to is thinking that the only way to address the climate change is to really account for environmental impact in every single transaction that takes place. And so kind of playing around in this area of digital assets creates a pathway in order to understand not just carbon, but any type of environmental benefit that can then be transacted between individuals. So I would say like the overall impact I think is massive. Like understanding how humans transact value and then incorporating, environmental an understanding of the value that the environment provides in every single transaction. Like that's what is needed to solve all of this. And so that would be the dream to build that system out. But
Fantastic. So thank you so much for spending the time so far with us and sharing this whole wonderful story. And again, we had the chance to have a lot of like different women on the show, investors, founders, and always like to hear a little bit as a woman, as an entrepreneur in the tech and startup ecosystem in itself. How do you see the role of women like you to contribute to the fight of climate change? I mean, what would you say to other women who wants to take part something and really like act and move on into this fight? Like, how do you think like they could contribute more? Because I see that really like it's pushing compared to the ecosystem in itself. And I'd like to hear your opinion. Like, how can you motivate even more women to join?
yeah, I mean, I think we have to support each other as a team, right? So we got to get there, do everything we can, even though it is harder in the beginning, and just drag someone else with us. Like, no questions asked. Like, I'm here, you're going to be here too, period. I think that's super helpful. Like, there is bias, and it's kind of just inherent, I think, in the way humanity has functioned thus far. But with time, I do fully believe that that can be overcome, and to a point where we can then create a network to support other solutions. And I don't think it's just within climate tech, and any, let's say, solutions that are even oriented more directly towards just making capital. Like that in itself will be a benefit because it would, reduce the existing bias that exists amongst investors. So yeah, I don't know. It's hard. I would say it's hard, but we just got to get there.
No, I know, but I think it's fantastic to see so many, women like you and the others that we have seen so far, like really pushing the needle further. And I know sometimes it can be even harder. So congratulations on all of what you're doing. Quickly, last question here for this part. Like, what is your personal opinion regarding the climate crisis? I mean, what would you say to people who are in a way afraid of all the terrible news that's happening, and what are the consequences already visible of climate change today? As I ask often, are we doomed? What would you tell them?
It is easy to focus on some of the more negative aspects and news that comes out around the climate crisis, and to have this sense, this overwhelming sense of being too small to tackle the problem. But essentially, it is a problem created by a bunch of individual actions. So anything, I really do believe that anything we can take or own on an individual level will have an impact, and it's not too daunting. And I think there's just a lot of good feelings and sense of reciprocity that comes from investing into an environment around us, and understanding that taking care of the planet is not a sacrifice. It's not, an obligation, but rather something that is a matter of self-preservation and feels good, is a benefit, and understanding that relationship with the environment. So that's how I like to frame the doom and gloom that can be very overwhelming sometimes.
Yes, I know, and I'm super happy to hear so many positive people like you, and I think I'm part of it as well. Like seeing that anyway, the situation is what it is, and the only thing that we can do is to move on and try to contribute at every scale that we have towards a better solution that can only be better. That's for sure. So how can the community of investors, experts, founders listening today can help you?
Yeah, so we are fundraising right now. So open to talking with anyone interested in joining our journey. Likewise, I think potential founders or people who are kind of fascinated by this overlap of crypto and climate, and health and well-being. Like, let's talk as well. We're always looking to build a team out, expand our co-founding team. Where we can be found, I am accessible on obviously LinkedIn, email as well, Brittany at Sādu.io, and Twitter. That is going, Brittany M. Salas. But yeah.
So any question that I did not ask you that I should have for this first part of the interview?
Not that I can think of, but I will let you know if anything comes to mind.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Brittany, for your time and your incredible insight and experience and energy, and super excited to see so many like brilliant people and women like you putting so much effort on to move the ball towards a better and a cleaner world. So thank you so much for what you do for everyone of us.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much.
Hi, it's Guillaume again. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the show. As I said, do not hesitate to share an episode with a friend. Also, if you value the work we do for the climate tech ecosystem, here is how you can contribute to it. Today, I'm asking for your support and a donation or sponsorship to make the work of our self-funded team more viable. Even a small contribution means a lot to us. In any case, I will invite you to subscribe to our channels and visit our website startupbasecamp.org to discover more episodes like this one, and get your membership to access all our members' exclusive content. So remember, all of this is possible because of your support and donation. And we want you to be part of this collective movement against climate change. Let's keep in touch, and I hope you will enjoy our next show with us.